Mr. Vincent, I've been in prison for over 22 months. It's a feeling of a great battle that is halfway gone. It's a feeling of remorse. It's a feeling of enthusiasm. When I say a feeling of remorse, what remorse do I have? The remorse goes thus. We expect Cameroon to be a state of law, where there is a rule of law, meaning that before anyone is dumped in jail, it would have been through due procedure. But you can imagine that some of us were arrested and taken to jail without prior investigation of the charges that were leveled against us. So it's aching to be in jail for over 22 months, and then just in the later end for the judge to tell you that what you've been saying for over 1 year is the gospel truth. So now it's a feeling of enthusiasm because it makes us to know that we had every reason to engage into the fight. You know, we've been fighting since a decade and a half. Since I got involved in politics, we've been talking of Cameroon not being a state of law, because we've seen several cases of people being arrested and dumped in prison without any just cause. I want to talk of the case of the magistrate Ayapol Abine that was dumped in jail. You can imagine a man of that caliber. And then later on he was released. We have other cases. The arrest of Prof Maurice Kamto on the 28th of January 2019, alongside some of his party officials, which I was one of them, and then deported to Yaoundé, and we spent almost close to 9 months in the Kondengi Central Prison, and then later on a decree from the President of the Republic was passed on the 4th of October 2019, and we were released. So it's a feeling of experience because it has permitted me to get acquainted with life, especially the stories of many voiceless Cameroonians who are in prison that cannot have that opportunity so easily to meet people that they can share their experiences with. I met so many people in prison and they have so many stories to tell. A man that, like the case of Jules Omer in Twenkam, that spent almost 10 years in prison, and only one day he was freed, discharged and acquitted for no good reason, simply because they suspected that he was involved in armed deals. So imagine 10 years of somebody's life being spent. So when I was in prison, the story of Jules Omer Twenkam inspired me, because I found out that if a man could be in prison for 10 years and one day they just released him, was discharged and acquitted, meaning that he was considered or judged non-guilty. So it would be the case with me. It would be the case too with many other people that I love in prison, like the first national vice president of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, Mamadou Mota, the national treasurer, Professor Alain Foguet, and you have the spokesperson, Bibou Nisak. And then prior to my leaving the central prison, I had people like Mr. Zambwe Pascal, who is the national inspector in charge of implantation of the party, was arrested, and then they just had to place him on a waiting trial at the Kondengi Central Prison. I met many good-looking, let me say, good spirit, high-minded people in the prison, like Mancho BBC of the Anglophone crisis. So I tried to speak with him and find out exactly what motivated him to launch the coffin revolution in Bamenda. And I had to learn a lot, because then I was in Douala. I hadn't that opportunity to really find out the motivational factors that pushed most of them into the street in 2016. So it's an experience, because I met Cameroonian youth, very hardworking, because when you go to the Condengue Center prison, you find many youths there. They are dumped in prison. You find some of them involved in handicrafts. Some of them are producing chains. They use coins, use local means to produce very important things. And I said, oh, what a fine brain. If we can gather these young youths and then maybe recycle them, they could easily be reinserted in the society. But then they are dumped in the prison and nobody's there to take care of them. They are just left there, they waste part of their life, and then finally one day they are dumped outside and they think that the prison had done them any good. It's a feeling of enthusiasm because the prison permitted me to know exactly the different things we can do whenever we take over power in order to prepare the youth who are sent into prison for reinsertion in the society. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. I've spent more than 21 months in the prison, Condengue Center prison. I don't regret it because it's a whole experience. Wherever you go, that gives you that opportunity, a school of learning. It's worth embracing and thanking God for it. Because, first of all, I'm a Christian. I know that the Bible tells us in the book of Romans chapter 8, when you read it verse 28, they say everything worketh for good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So I knew it deeply in me that if the prison had to be part of the making process for me, I would not miss it. So I went through prison. I have no regret because it permitted me to change the lives of many people in prison, because in prison I was doing the work of an evangelist. I had a prison ministry that I was part of it. And many people in the prison enjoyed my ministry. So up to extent, most of the prisoners I left, they were asking me, evangelist, do you have a church outside that when we leave we can integrate your church and all the like? So you find that it's been a whole life experience spending with them some few years in prison. So I don't regret. And like I told you, when we entered the prison, our presence in the prison was like a motivation to many other youths who were already maybe on the verge of giving up, because I've met many youths in the prison who were sick. Some of them were psychologically tortured and all the like. It permitted me to talk to them, to tell them that prison is not an end on its own. It's not a fatality. It's not the end of life. It is just a whole life process. If you can pass through prison, it all depends on what you can make up of the prison, because there are many good people in the prison. If you associate yourself with good people, you can come out and be a very good person in the society. We take the case of Amugu Belenga, who is the Director General of Vision Cat. He's been an ex-convict. We take the case of the present Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, who was an ex-convict. We take the case of Issa Chiruma, who's been an ex-convict. So other many people that I might not cite their names here because of time. So prison is not the end of life. It might be the end of life for you depending on how you make your decisions in the prison. But when you take the good decisions in the prison to encounter the right people, you will come out obviously being a successful man. It's not, life is not, it's not a matter of a marathon. It is a journey, and everyone can arrive at his own time. So I don't have any feeling of regret ever passing through the Condengue Central Prison. Talking of my arrest, Vincent, honestly speaking, it's a whole ugly episode. I can vividly recall the hurdles of that 28th of January 2019. When I received a telephone call, I was in my office because then I was managing a secondary school. I was the Surveillant General, the Senior Discipline Master, and the party commissioned me to pass on Equinox TV to denounce or to disassociate the party from the destructions of the embassies in Berlin and in Paris, to tell the world that the party was not happy with the actions of some unidentified people who went and attacked the embassies of Cameroon in Paris and in Berlin. So when I went to the TV that was on Equinox TV that day, after my programs on Equinox TV, that was 6:30, because I was supposed to be on Talking Point with Babila Jonathan. So when I rounded up there, I got information that the national president of my political party, President-elect, His Excellency Maurice Kamto, was targeted by some men, and he was at Mr. Abed Zongang's place. So I said, okay, I could not have gotten such an information of very grievous nature, and then I had to just head home. Let me pass through Mr. Abed Zongang and find out what was happening there. To my greatest surprise, as I reached there, it was about 7:20 something p.m. I met a good number of militants who were outside there. Professor Maurice Kamto was not outside because he was there with Christian Penda Ekoka. He wasn't outside, but they were inside. As his deputy spokesperson that I was, and the team press officer, I was ushered in, maybe to talk with him. But as I entered Mr. Zongang's place, I didn't see him because they were right deep. They were inside the parlor, and so many people outside. I met other journalists from other TV channels who were there, and they wanted to really interview him. I have journalists, the cameraman of Equinox TV, there were other cameramans, maybe from Canada. There were some that came from Afrique Media. So finally, they had to interview me. I was at the balcony, they interviewed me there, and I explained to them that the people that work on a manifesto, we work on a program, and it's a political program that promotes discipline. It's a political program that promotes unity. It's a political program that promotes the respect of state institutions, so that it's not an insurrection movement. So I explained to them, and that explained the reason why many militants were gathered there, that they came there because they heard that the life of Professor Maurice Kamto was at risk. So at about 8 p.m., that was 8 p.m., we saw a group of uniformed officers barged in at Mr. Zongang's place, and they came with a warrant. It was a search warrant. Mandat de perquisition was a search warrant they gave them. And they said they wanted to see Professor Kamto and Mr. Zongang and Penda Ekoka, and they thought maybe Professor Foge was there, the fourth person, whereas there were just three of them. So Mr. Zongang came out. When he came out and met the police commissioner that was there, he presented a search warrant to him, which he said, okay, they have all rights to enter and search, because on a search warrant, there are specific items which you have to collect. So after some moments of conversation on telephone, we only heard Monsieur le ministre, son excellence, ils sont là presque une dizaine, je crois une cinquantaine de personnes. They just asked questions, do you have enough logistics? Est-ce que vous avez assez de logistique? Il dit oui. Il dit bon, amenez-le à la PG. That is how we were bundled, all of us, into the car and taken to the judicial police at Bonanjo. Reaching there, our fate got changed. We only told that they were going to deport us to Yaoundé, and that was how we finally found ourselves on the 29th of January at the Groupement Spécial des Opérations at, that's what they call the GSO. So at the GSO, we spent a good number of time there. But let me tell you the most funniest aspects of our deportation to Yaoundé. They drove us recklessly. We at gunpoint. Every time we asked them, where are you taking us to? What they would tell us, the uniformed men would tell us, c'est pour votre sécurité. Even when they took us to GSO and placed us on the ground, we asked them, why is there not an adequate light in our room? So they would tell us, c'est pour votre sécurité. Even the torture we were receiving, they would tell us, c'est pour votre sécurité. That is exactly how it all happened. So on the 12th of February, we were transported to the military court in Yaoundé, and then we spent 13 over 14, and then finally 14, all of us were placed on mandat de dépôt on a waiting trial at the Kondongue Central Prison. That is exactly what I can tell about our arrest. It was not an easy, it was a very painful arrest because we had no way to communicate with our parents. We were not given access to our lawyers were not given access to us, and all. although like, it was a blatant and a flagrant violation of the rights to defend or to have access to a legal counsel. Mr. Vincent, you just asked a question that in the prison I certainly spent time with some of the Anglophone detainees. In fact, when I entered prison, I hadn't so much time to frequent the Anglophone detainees, because we entered the prison on a purely political note. So the political struggle of the Cameroon Renaissance movement had no similarity with the what took most of the Anglophone detainees into prison. So it was practically difficult for us to have anything in common, except most of them that we used to meet in church. For example, a man like Mancho BBC, that is part of the local church community in the prison. So we frequently meet in the church together, and most of the things we could discuss were purely religious things. And I want to assure you that a man like Fritz Takam, who is a man of God, he was released some few months ago, that we met him. They are very kind and good looking and God-loving people. So, but then the little I could gather from them was that they need a country in which people are free to speak according to the dictates of their consciences. They need a country where there isn't marginalization. People would not be recruited into public service based on their ethnic backgrounds, based on their language, that's French and English. They need a country in which there is meritocracy and a regional balance. Those are some of the things I could gather from them, but to say we had any time to speak deeply, we hadn't that time to talk deeply. Though many of them, they told me they really loved the fight of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, that the Cameroon Renaissance movement is fighting for genuine change, the change of regime in the nation, and most of them think that if there is a change of regime in Cameroon, it could bring a solution to the marginalization of the Anglophone crisis. In summary, that's the whole thing that I can say about the relationship I entertained with the Anglophone detainees. If not, our relationship in the prison was just relationship between detainee and the detainee, just like I spent relationship with other people who came into prison for other reasons which were not connected with the Anglophone crisis. It was not any special relationship, it was just relationship between detainee and the detainee. That was on the 22nd of July 2019 when the so-called mutiny or the riot in Kondenge started. Yes. It started as a result of grievances that were tabled by the Anglophone detainees, because many of them said they were deported hundreds of kilometers away from their homeland and that they hadn't access to medical care, they hadn't access to communication with their families, and then they said the judicial process was slow. So from what I gathered, most of them had to notify the superintendent of the central prison, then was Freddie Major, and with a letter, they served him a letter to present to the Minister of Justice. So on that 22 of July 2019, I was in my cell room just like any other person, because most often I have a lot of time that I put in the night to read, and in the daytime I'm always sleeping. When I entered the prison, I developed a new lifestyle. In the night I read, maybe I can spend the night, it's always by 5 a.m. that I sleep. I sleep at 5 a.m. So you find that from 5 a.m. sometimes I will sleep and only get up maybe by 2 p.m. or 2 to 3. So that day I got up late. When I got up that day late, it was about 3 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon, and there was noise outside. So I headed down to the chaplaincy of the prison. So coming up, I met some of those guys that work in the rapid intervention room of the prison. They call it Bureau d'Intervention. So they told me that most of these guys there, because some of them there were the guys I used to speak to them, caution them, they respect me as their pastor. So they told me, you go and try to see how you can talk to these guys. That is exactly how I found myself trying to persuade them to go back to their cell rooms. So when I persuaded them, begged them to go to their cell rooms, good number of them accepted, but some of the leaders of the Anglophone crisis, they did not hear me out. So they said, we are not in the same battle. I am Kamto and they are Ambazonian. We don't have anything in common. I should leave them alone. So I loved them, and that was how I went back to my cell room. But I gave the report to I told the people of the Bureau d'Intervention, that's the rapid intervention of the prison, that I've tried to speak to them, and that most of them were hesitant to yield to my plea. So I went back to my cell room. It was about 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the night. While I was in my bed sleeping, I heard noise. There was noise because there were gunshots outside, and then tear gas down. So that was what came, because the tear gas filtered into my room. So there was no way to breathe. I had to soak a dress in water and then put in my nostrils. Now the commandant, the person that was commanding the quarter, came in, and then there is the coordinator, because I was in the room of the coordinator in prison. So when he came, he told me that you are sleeping here while one of your militants, Nana Sesh Branco, has been taken out. They don't know whether he's dead or he's alive. So I got up, I was very confused. When I went outside, I met some of our militants that were already panicking. Some of them were already about to revolt. So I tried to calm them down. During that night, the general of the prison came and they met me, and they told me that I should calm down my guys, that everything is okay. And then finally he said, if you want to know whether he's lying or he's saying the truth, they should delegate somebody to come to the superintendent room and find out whether the guy is alive or not. That's how we went to the registrar's office. Before we reached the registrar's office, that Nana Sesh Branco was already taken to set. So at the courtyard, inside the courtyard, the gendarme officers that were there and other police officers, they just got me, well, they beat me up. So they tore my dresses, naked me. When some of the prison warders came to intervene, they told them that no, they have no right to intervene. The warders told them that no, this guy, he was not part of the riot here in the afternoon. So he was instead the one that was struggling to calm down the tension. So they told them, the gendarmes and the police officers told them that no, you are supporting this guy because he's your friend. So the warders told me that no, they can no more. Let me go. It could be my bad luck. That was how they had to handcuff me that night, alongside one hardened criminal who came. At the GSO, we were kept on handcuff. Our hands were handcuffed for 2 weeks. We spent 2 weeks at the GSO. We ate just once in the night at 8 p.m. in the night. And then, if you wanted to bathe, you will be handcuffed. You go out and manage to bathe with your mate, with handcuff in your hand. If you want to go to the toilet, you will go with your room with your fellow detainee with handcuffs in your hand. That is the hell we went through, especially during the moments of the mutiny in Kondengui. Honestly speaking, to say I played any part, maybe to fuel the chaos, I didn't do anything in Kondengui. So many people, even the guards, they could bear witness that no, I was innocent. But it took the law, the legal department, so many months, 1 year, 5 months in prison to prove my innocence. You can imagine it, 1 year, 5 months of somebody's life wasted like that. But then, what I know is, those are the years God placed me in prison, maybe to assist some other people morally or to assist some other people, prepare them for their reinsertion when their prison term will be over. Thank you, Mr. Vincent.